And we are back. And if you're joining us right now, we are just getting our second conversation for the morning started. And as we mentioned before the break, we are talking all about the social and behavior change communication launch. And joining us in our studio to talk all about it, we have Michelle Irving, who is the Executive Director for the National Women's Commission, as well as Kylah Ciego, who is the Director of Programs and Education with the Belize Family Life Association. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning. Good morning.
And
Thanks very much for having us.
Thank you for joining us. I'm sure we and all our viewers are very interested to learn all about the launch of this initiative. So perhaps we can just start right at the beginning and talk about what the communication is all about, and perhaps who would like to start that?
Okay, I think I can
sure.
take age privilege here.
Yes.
and go ahead and start the discussion. And of course, my colleague will help me, get through so we could have a clear understanding of what we're aiming to do. But with our partners, UNFPA and the Spotlight Project, which aims to look at the issue of violence against women and girls globally, and Belize is also a participant of that initiative that is supported by the EU and other UN partners. We are looking at the issue of gender equity and equality, and more or less to say inequity and inequality, and how that sometimes can perpetrate or support violence, and how this violence is, looked at individually, in community, society, and also by countries. Like, how do we have laws and legislation to ensure that each and every person in our society is protected? And so when we talk about violence against women and girls, we need to also tie that in, like I said earlier, with the gender construct, because the issue of power and control comes into play, and a lot of times the way our society is constructed, women and girls, children, more vulnerable people seem to be more targeted for violence in the home, in the schools, in the community, and sometimes even, structural state violence where inequality is perpetrated at different levels. And so this campaign is looking to change that behavior, for us to reflect as a group, as an individual, how we contribute towards this, how our behavior contribute towards this, and then how collectively we can change that behavior. So,
what has been the root? You're talking about social and behavioral approaches, right? So, based on the information that you've been collecting throughout your years at, the National Women's Commission and BFLA, what is the behavioral root of this issue? Why do we conduct ourselves, or do people conduct themselves in a manner that eventually boils down to violence against women and girls and vulnerable persons?
So really it's tied to the inequality and the power imbalance between men and women. We did, as a part of the launch and the activities that we're doing, we did a countrywide consultation to understand what are some of the norms that fuel violence and gender-based violence. And so talking with young people, talking with men, talking with women, rural women, persons all over the country, trying to understand, what do you think fuels violence in your community, in your home? And it really comes down to, and even evidence and research shows this, it comes down to the fact that we have inequality between men and women. There is always a power imbalance. And so for us, how do we combat something that's a norm is that we have to teach we have to teach differently. We have to recondition that this is not normal. And so the entire process, as we looked at, so what are the norms that we ascribe to in Belize? We figured out that, okay, to change this, we have to create new norms. So we have to create ideas or reinforce ideas so that people could think differently. Because when you think differently, you should act differently. So that's the social behavior change component of it.
Yeah.
So in one of our products, we're targeting, for instance, the idea, the norm that household chores are only for women, right? So we are shifting that in the sense that men can also participate, and household responsibility, child rearing, it's both our responsibilities. It's not only for the woman. And there are several men who are very active fathers, who are there, who are taking care of their children, and all of that. And so we want to highlight that because we want men to understand that that is the norm, right? So
I wonder how you would begin that open communication, that open discussion to a society that's pretty fit and set, I should say, in their ways, because no matter how much you educate the women, you will still have the other side of the coin that is set in their ways. So how do you create that balance?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so I think that educating women and girls is very important, because one thing, women also participate, especially in our society, heavily in child rearing. But a lot of times, if your social norms is saying something and you have no other way to counterbalance that, you will go with the social norms. So you will then continue to perpetuate, maybe in your household, that household duties are for girls, for example, and boys have certain duties, instead of saying, you know, we have the collective responsibility to ensure that this household is taken care of in every way possible: the cleaning, the cooking, the washing, the care work, let's put it like that, the unpaid care work. And so I think that also we have to start at different levels. We start with, you know, daycare centers, schools, preschools, who you choose, like we grew up going to schools. The girls sweep and the boys lift the chairs and the benches, right? And so, and the boys will take out the trash, for example. So that is reinforcing a norm, right? The norm that this is the chore for women, this is the chore for men. And it is not saying that women could also do some heavy lifting, so to speak, because, you know, but it is a belief that women cannot lift heavy things. And the babies that we carry are far heavier than the cement block and the steel and the sack of cement. So the point is that we are doing heavy lifting, but it's not recognized as muscle work.
Right.
And so because it's done in the context of care work, if you're caring for elderly and you have to support them to turn, to take them to the restroom or to do whatever, you realize how much heavy lifting you are doing.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving a comparison of how we view certain things and why we put it where we put it. But when we start to peel away at those layers, you then could make an analysis and say, well, no, anyone can do this, you know. And so the construct of just trying to bring ourselves a bit more equal in terms of respect as well, because equality fosters respect. Inequality fosters, you know, I could do with you what I will because I am better than you, I am higher than you, I'm superior. And if you have that kind of mentality, then you will use violence to then bring the next person in control. And you know, we see that all across all levels. And so
I mean, that can also boil down to the man feeling insecure about his own behavioral problems. But I wanted to talk about the word that you use, which is equity, and the bringing the gender playing field to the same level. And when you educate women and girls and you show them their power, the other side feels that they're losing power. So how do you then open that communication to tell them you're not losing
power, not
power.
concede,
Power is
right.
not exactly, and especially if you are in a household or a family setting where that is supposed to be a balance of how you raise your children and so forth. So how do you convince the other side that you're not losing anything by
You're
having
gaining, Miriam.
yeah, right?
Well, through these campaigns.
Right.
Through
Tell
these
me, say it
campaigns.
to me then, Miss Irving. Tell me.
Through these campaigns, because these campaigns, and you know, like Ms. Kylah said, a lot of groundwork has been built in. So this is a campaign that's built from the ground up. So it's not that somebody sit in some place and think that this is what is good for rural women, or this is what is good for rural men, or boys in the urban centers need to hear this. This comes from rural women, rural men, urban boys, youth, you know. And so through these campaigns, because believe it or not, we as social beings, we subscribe to certain norms. And when we got in and we were talking, you know, as women, we were talking about, you know, our fashion and why we choose what we choose and how we want to look, how we look. But a lot of those things are also sold to us through campaigns, right? Through campaigns, through marketing campaigns, for example. And so then we subscribe to that. And so a social and behavior change campaign is, the intent is to then change behavior by you seeing different norms, by us seeing, we have one, I think, the young girls, the young girl and the young boy in hard hat, like they are
in other professions.
Engineering, professions that are deemed, you know, usually for men. And sometimes even in schools, they will tell you, you know, you want to go and do building or something, and you know, you are overtly or covertly steered away from that.
Yeah. Right.
So it's just to tell everyone, teachers, young people, parents, that, you know, you can do, and you would be surprised. I was doing a session at a school, primary school, standard 5, and this young man was so adamant that a woman cannot be a doctor. Yeah, and this was like just before COVID. So I'm telling you, it's not like 1923, right? And and he was so adamant. And to be honest, this was in Dangriga. All the chief physicians are women.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
At that time, they had, I think,
Wonder
up
where
to
he
now.
get his ideas from.
Up to now, yes. But I'm just showing you how, at this point in time, his norm, his belief is that. So when he goes to the hospital, and maybe if he goes and even someone is attending to him who is a physician, who is a woman, he's thinking that is a nurse. And if a nurse who is a man, he's thinking that is a doctor.
Yeah.
You know, and so that norm is set in his mind. And so now this is how we want to get to that young person, to let him understand. Because now if he has a daughter that says, you know, I want to, oh, what's wrong with you? Girl are not doctor. You know, you have to be a nurse, or you have to be a teacher, or whatever, you know. So
And
it's scary.
Yes, and you know, on that note, I want to kind of go back to something that you mentioned earlier, talking about the use of violence to enforce what the existing norms are. And I wonder if you could just expand on that a little bit, just so that, you know, our viewers also can understand fully what we're talking about when we talk about, like, say, gender-based violence and things like that.
So I just want to backtrack as well, because even though the emphasis on women and girls, it does not mean that we're leaving men behind, right? So the entire premise under the Sustainable Development Goals is leaving no one behind. So some of the messages and the products and the entire campaign is targeted and also focused on men who also have to do some building. But getting to your statement, Gavin, things like the hissing and catcalling that we experience on the street. Believe it or not, some women might like that, but that in itself is a form of violence. That is harassment, right? So it's how do we even recognize these things that are so normal, So simple things like that, that is a form of harassment. When we make statements to our children, our sons, and we say, stop the go on girly, or stop the cry, man, not for cry. I mean, those things still happen when our children or like I always say to myself as a person who has 7 brothers, I ask myself, like, who do they fall to? Right? When things get difficult, when their life is very difficult, because we expect men to suck it all up, right?
They have to be strong.
They have to be strong, but being strong doesn't mean that you can't be vulnerable too, right? And so if a man cries, he's not any less than a man. He has emotions just like we do. So it's some of these very ingrained things that we do that's so normal in our life that is also propelling that inequality between men and women and propelling violence.
It's so, I like that you say it's so ingrained in our culture, because as quote unquote woke as some of us might think we are, you know, old habits die really hard. And sometimes when you're frustrated, and let's say your son is perhaps, you know, maybe not behaving the best and is screaming and crying, and just out of that frustration you turn around and you say, stop crying like a girl. Not that you meant it in the moment, but you kind of did.
The damage is done. So, because we don't tell our girls the same.
No.
So whenever the way how I would do an analysis of anything as it relates to gender, because gender is about how men and women, boys and girls experience anything in a society. The reason why we focus on, for example, ending violence against women and girls is because they are the main ones that are, and this is not to say that men and boys do not experience violence as well, even in the context of domestic violence, you understand? And there are different forms of violence that people, you know, a lot of times we think about violence, we only think about physical violence, but we have verbal violence that is quite pervasive in our society, right? That you use words to just tear somebody apart, bring them down completely, all right? Then, you know, you have economic violence, sexual violence, a lot of times that we really don't talk about it, but it's that violence that is intended to exert power and control. So so those norms, so we have to keep reassessing ourselves, the things that we're saying, and you're right, we all, because we are a product of this society, and we all have those default that our mom said to us, our dad said to us, our teacher said to us, those, and it sticks in our head. And so sometimes it takes a lot of work, and you need support to change the way we think, the way we, you know, colors, toys, you go right down to absolutely everything is divided into segments. And so we're, you know, trying to ensure that we have a bit more blending, let's put it like that, of all the different things, and to ensure that boys and girls, I'm talking about children, you know, experience a more equitable, equal approach. And those who need more, they are having disabilities, they're dealing with different mental illness, they're dealing with different needs that they have, then as a part of our gendered construct and understanding our society, they then should be given more. Because
I mean, I feel like time just went by very quickly, but as we've talked about the core and the root of this communication, so let's talk about the launch as we wrap up. Kylah, give us the details.
So tomorrow the launch is at 9 a.m. at the Belize Biltmore Plaza, and we're featuring some of the products that have been developed for the campaign. And the next steps is really how do we work at individual level, communities, families, to work towards shifting behavior. So we definitely look forward to sharing with the country in the next coming months under the Spotlight Initiative, and as we continue in our own national programs, these different products. So
when and where?
Biltmore tomorrow at 9 a.m.
All right, so this communication is open to the public? In
Well,
Belize?
I do believe so. We are, we have people who we have invited, of course, but if people are interested in coming, they could reach out to the Belize Family Life Association, the National Women's Commission, you know, to say we're interested, or we have some young people that are interested, and then we could see how we could definitely accommodate them. So, you know, we have our Facebook, our websites, and our numbers are quite public. So I think between some of the partners here, we would be open to ensuring that other people who are interested in this topic to come and see, because the launch is just the start, as you could imagine. And so at that time, you could then say, well, I'm a teacher, and you know, I found this interesting, and I want to continue to develop that, and then to see how you could get more tools. There are quite a bit of tools. In the Caribbean, you know, we have some amazing thing that is going on that we could also share in Belize also, you know, and so there's a lot of things going on that people can then use this jumping off pad to get involved in ending violence against everyone, and having a more peaceful society, and a society that is based on equity, equality, and respect.
Wonderful. That's a wonderful way to close off this segment. Shell, Kylah, thank you ladies so much for coming in. The launch is at the Biltmore Plaza beginning at 9 a.m. Ladies, have a great day.
Thank you.
With that, we are going to take another short break, and we'll be back with the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry and their workshops for this 2023 year. Stay tuned.